Good morning, everyone. I was asked this week to do the midweek message, and since it's been a while since I've attended NHCBC, I thought I should introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Tim's daughter. NHCBC has been a huge part of my life since I was 6 months old. You are the community that raised me, that taught me about Jesus. You are the community that taught me about love. And it's that love that I've carried with me for the next 13 years since I've been at our church. I'm also a pastor, so there are two Pastor Springs. And I'm serving at a men's prison in Southern Illinois as the chaplain. And that's what I wanted to share a little bit about with you this week was prison ministry. So we, where I work, are a minimum security male facility, which means that all of the incarcerated men at our prison will be there for 10 years or less, and usually about 5 years or less. And during those years, I am their pastor. This means that I coordinate weekly religious services, I organize their holiday celebrations, distribute religious materials like holy books and devotionals, I distribute religious items like medallions and prayer rugs, I oversee a large group of volunteers who come in and offer programming. I do pastoral visits in our healthcare and our segregation units, and I respond to crisis events and do death notifications. So one thing I love about the prison ministry that I do is that I am an interfaith chaplain. I'm a chaplain for people of all faiths and all religions. Right now, as I'm working on making our weekly Advent reflections for the Christian offenders, I'm also organizing the celebration for our Jewish offenders of Hanukkah and for our Odinist offenders to celebrate the pagan holiday called Yule. And later next year, I'll be making plans for our Muslim offenders to celebrate Ramadan. I work with offenders who are Wiccan, Buddhist, Jehovah's Witness, Rastafarian, Hindu, and Mormon, so it really makes for an exciting learning opportunity. I'm also responsible for ministering to our employees and our staff, not just the offenders. So I coordinate the program that we offer that allows employees to find counseling, and I also make pastoral visits to our security staff. So one theme that's really central to my ministry is this theme of practicing inclusion. It comes up over and over and over again. And this idea of practicing inclusion is very countercultural because as human beings, we like things to be black and white. Even I do. It's simple and it's easy. It makes for not complicated situations. So we tend to think things like people who go to prison are bad. People who stay out of prison are good. People who are Christians are good. But people who don't believe in Jesus need to be converted to Christianity and maybe are bad. From the offender's perspective, they are good, and law enforcement is bad. But from law enforcement perspective, they are good, and the offenders are bad. Right, wrong, good, and bad, black and white. We spend a lot of time as humans dehumanizing other people, the people who are different from us, people who we think should be a little bit more like us. We spend a lot of time hating and categorizing and trying to make ourselves feel good. So in the prison, I'm constantly working with one offender who wants me to tell another offender that their way of practicing religion is wrong. Or a security staff who wants me to treat an offender badly because they deserve it. Or an offender who thinks it's okay to assault a staff member because law enforcement is always out to get them. It's easy to be against people, no matter who you are, which is unfortunate because Jesus wasn't against people. Jesus was for people. I want to read an excerpt today to you from a book called A Farewell to Mars by an author named Brian Zahnd. He writes about this idea of separating people into good and bad categories and what Jesus actually calls us to do instead. So this is what he writes. Jesus' call to love our enemies presents us with a problem that goes well beyond the challenge of trying to live out an ethic of enemy love on a personal level. How can a nation exist without hating its enemies? If nations can't hate and scapegoat their enemies, how can they cohere? If societies can't project blame onto a hated other, how can they keep from turning on themselves? Jesus' answer is as simple as it is revolutionary. Instead of an arrangement of hate and violence, the world is now to be arranged around love and forgiveness. The fear of our enemy and the pain of being wronged is not to be transferred through blame, but dispelled through forgiveness. Unity is not to be built around the practice of scapegoating a hated victim, but around the practice of loving your neighbor as yourself, even if your neighbor is your enemy. Jesus was trying to lead humanity into the deep truth that there is no them, there is only us. And that's what Jesus calls us to be, people who resist hate, who resist demonizing or otherizing people. Instead, we are called to look with love and compassion on people who are different from us. We're called to open ourselves up and share love and inclusion. So I would invite you today to think about who you might be demonizing or otherizing in your own life, whether that's a specific person or maybe a group of people. Because the people that you're thinking about, those others, Jesus calls us to sit at the table with them. Because at Jesus' table, there is always more room. And at Jesus' table, there are no edges. At Jesus' table, there is no them. There is only us. Amen.